Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel by English. So question 5 is 40 marks on the table. You are given a fairly nice task to do. Every paper I've ever seen, there's been opportunities for a half engaged child to write something relatively engaging. Just remember, the title of the paper is Explorations in Creative Reading and Writing. The other thing to remember, which I think is very pertinent, is if you look at the mark scheme for question 5, it is exactly the same every year. There is no particular thing they want you to talk about. There is no particular narrative device. There is no particular element of a description. It is purely, are you convincing and compelling, or just convincing as we go down the mark scheme? Are your tone, style and register assuredly matched or convincingly matched? Are you using extensive and ambitious vocabulary? Are you trying to use linguistic devices in a crafted way, i.e. are they deliberate and do they work? Structural features, there are easy ways to do that, which we'll go through. And are your ideas linked and fluent? So that's the content at 24. Out of 16, obviously it's for technical side of it. Your sentence demarcation, so punctuation, full stops, commas, colons, semicolons. Are you using them effectively? Not just putting them in. Are you using them? I want to add extra information to this sentence for effect. I want to introduce a dramatic list. Are you using short sentences for effect? Bang, full stop. That's probably the easiest one. Are you using standard English? This is whatever the question or task. Do not think, oh, it's for a school magazine, therefore I can be informal. That wouldn't fly. You wouldn't get it in. You presume it is a formal task, even if it is a story and you are writing a ridiculous dialogue between two of your friends and you are going to use all the street slang they would use. You need to think about accessibility. And obviously the last 2 bullet points, and I'll really want to make this as clear as I can. There is a bullet point for spelling. There is a bullet point for extensive and ambitious use of vocabulary. If you have a word you want to use and a suddenly word, I can't remember how to spell it, you are better off using it if it is the right word, because you will gain the marks for the vocabulary. Now obviously if your spelling is like mine and not ideal, you are likely to get 16 out of 16. However, if your vocabulary is well good and like mine, you are probably going to be able to get into level 4 with some spelling mistakes. Right. Look at the picture. Right, so your local library is running a creative writing competition. Ignore that. All it means is you're writing a piece of creative writing. It says local library because it presumes you are aware of that. The best entries will be published in the booklet of creative writing. That near enough doesn't matter, because you're writing a description or a story. Now look at the picture. Ooh, the picture is there purely to give all students an opportunity to imagine something. Now, well, I'll get into what I pictured, but I think you're far better off picturing somewhere you know that is similar to the picture that you've been to, because then you can bring in all the other senses apart from what you can just see. But we'll get to that in a minute. So a description of a mysterious place or a story about an event that can be explained. Now, what I've done this time, other than in lessons and things, and again, if you haven't seen the first video on the reading section, the best website I've found for past papers and for a lot of other revision stuff is www.physicsandmathstutor.com. They've collated them in a really good way. They're ordered, they're easy to find, they're easily labelled. It's a very good resource. So if we go back to question 5, and if you've watched the previous video about the reading section, you should have already read this question before you even start the paper, before you even read the insert. So you're already thinking, how do I make it mysterious? How do I make it unexplained? And there are 4 simple things you need to have in your head, whatever the task, I am going to try and utilise these as best I can. So adjectives, adverbs. How do you express yourself? How do you create a sense of place, create a sense of time, create a sense of a mood, an atmosphere? And those words are the words we use. Metaphors and similes, they can really convey a sense of where the place is, or what the place is, or what is happening in the place, and they can really clarify what you mean. Cyclical technique, very easy way to get a structural feature in. Whatever you do at the start, you come back to at the end in some way. Either you refer to it, or it's changed, or there is a development of it. And the last one, I think, particularly for anyone aiming for the top bands, because A, it's a structural feature, but B, it means that you can get across an idea, and it's the show not tell. I didn't want to write show not tell down. I'm sure you've seen it a million times. You need to show the reader that it is scary. You need to show the reader that it's dangerous. You don't tell them, because the moment you tell them, they stop thinking, they become very passive readers, they don't engage. You become an active reader because of the suspense. As we've seen in the insert, there's a strange child in the garden. That's a big event, that's weird, that's strange. But then we suddenly, and we get that in paragraph describing the garden, this ancient and mulberry tree, and it's like, no, where's the girl? And back to the girl. And that sense of interest immediately makes you an active reader, and immediately makes you really like involved in the story, involved in who this girl is. So essential conceit, any symbolism or motif, so anything that you repeatedly come back to, and it could be a colour, it could be a noise, it could be an object, just something that is interwoven in your story or description that is almost that you're pinning everything around. So you put something in the middle and say, right, I'm describing a really spooky cemetery, there's going to be a spooky statue. Now, initial ideas, you should see that, and you should have got some ideas already from the insert. Obviously, doorways and portals are immediately implied by that picture, you know, like going from one place to another. Or think about Stranger Things, think about Rick and Morty, think about what did I watch recently, science fiction-y? Oh, Elden Ring, Dark Souls. You've got, you suddenly go through this thing and you're somewhere else, but it's suddenly very dangerous. There's a range of Stargate was the classic when I was your age. There's a range of these ideas in literature and art and film and TV, computer games, that a spooky doorway, it leads to a spooky place. A mystical doorway leads to a mystical place. The Mines of Moria, the Elvish word for friend and tree. So always think about it as it's a transitioning from one area and one mood or atmosphere to another area and another mood and atmosphere. So remember, atmosphere is place, and that will directly affect the mood of the protagonist or the mood of the observer. Other worlds, dimensions, you've got a sense that there is something. Where was I? Sorry, I had to pause it. In Amazon delivery. So other worlds, dimensions, and by other worlds, I don't necessarily mean like Doctor Strange multiverse stuff. I mean a world maybe you're not welcome in, a world you're not comfortable in, a world you're not meant to be in. Obviously, other dimensions is the Doctor Strange stuff, Ant-Man stuff. Nature versus the man-made. You know, you might be leaving your sort of nice walled garden to go into the wilds. You might be like leaving the nice countryside to go into a spooky location. And then you've got that choosing to enter somewhere. By going through a gate or a doorway, you're making a conscious choice to enter somewhere where you either should be and want to be or shouldn't be, etc. And then these words here, just from ancient, obviously, because it's stone, and that eldritch, which means very spooky, eerie, gothic, spooky, heebie-jeebies. Don't know how to start that word. So you got all those ideas, and that would maybe be where I would plan. I'd have them in my head. I'd write down one. That's my overreaching sort of theme, right? So if you're going to do a story, personally I want to do a description, but what I've done with this one, because of the way the questions are quite nicely phrased, I think you can pretty much do the same thing for both for this one, in that you can have the same idea and adapt it. So if it's a story, there's character, there's movement, there is an event. If it is a description, you're going really detailed in, and obviously there are many techniques to plan. You can draw boxes around different objects in the picture, and like each paragraph focuses on a box. You can use the camera idea, where you pretend you're a cameraman and you're zooming into things, you're moving the camera, because even a description must have a sense of movement. You're not just a static observer saying, I see this, I see that. You need to sort of take the reader on a journey. So, imagination. It's a nature overgrown with degradation and man-made things. That archway looks very old. And then also, from the insert, calmness and trauma can create situations either in your mind or in a place. So you might be very calm, but you're entering through this weird doorway, which can create tension in itself. And you should have some ideas from the extract. This inside versus outside idea. Just because the picture doesn't feature a building, it doesn't mean that your story can't have one. And this thing about when we change from the strange girl to suddenly a description of the garden, introduce a spooky idea, introduce something unusual, and then move on to something else, so the reader's wandering. And obviously using setting to create atmosphere and mood is as old as the hills. Now, this is what I'd go at. I've written the start, I've written the end to show you the cyclical element, and I've basically done, these will be 5 very short paragraphs of action. So it's a story. It wasn't so much the creepy trees, the skeletal twisted branches swinging with sinister menace, even in the absence of any discernible breeze. I've used a bit of sibilance, I've used the skeletal element. It was the temperature drop. One side of the old Gothic style gate was cold, as you would expect for a brisk autumn day, but a solitary step into the eerie grounds beyond the gate produced a sharp, dramatic drop in temperature. Now, obviously establishing it's spooky, there's something weird going on, it's not quite right. I'm basing it on a real place that I've been to. When I was lucky enough to do trips to Ypres and the Somme in the World War I sites with students, there's a German cemetery at a place called Langemark, and it's very spooky, and you literally walk through a gate, and the wall is probably 2 foot between the road and the cemetery. That it is colder in there. It is colder. Everyone that I've been with has said it. So I'm just imagining that, and it's got trees and it's got these weird statues and that. I've sort of helped influence me. So don't rely on the picture. Think about somewhere you've been that is like the picture, because then you can get the sense of the movement of it. As you move around that place, what feeling did you get? The sounds and the sights and the smell. So then in my story, I was going to have somebody looking at headstones, obviously looking for a particular one. Then I'm going to have zooming in on a weird statue that is unsettling. Then they find the headstone, and then a bit where they're sure the statue has changed expression. And then they're going to be sure that they've seen it cry. Obviously, a weeping statue is, an old cliche of stories. And then the ending would be, which I would always tend to plan before I start. So plan the start and think, right, am I going to end this? Because then you know what you're aiming for. As they ran out of the darkening cemetery, so obviously it's getting night, the last wispy strands of dusk are making the trees seem far more ominous and sinister. Their hearts pounded as if they would burst from their chest, and as they gratefully flung themselves through the gate, a single drop of water, that would be the tear, could be heard hitting stonework. A simple, familiar sound, but it seemed to echo throughout the cemetery. Dun dun dun. Basically, the statue was crying. It's like spooky, innit? But it's just a simple idea. It doesn't have to be this mad, intricate story. Like the wine in the cemetery, who knows? Like why they, where, like whose headstone was it? It doesn't matter, because I'm being marked on. Can I use vocabulary? Can I use structure? I'm not expecting the next Harry Potter, and not in 40 minutes. Right, description. The key elements. So imagine a place, imagine it. So try and go somewhere in your head. As I said, I'm thinking of Langemark, the German cemetery, which is unbelievably macabre and morbid, but a strangely beautiful place. It is strange. I try and break it down to 5 key aspects. I want to talk about the gate as you enter. I want to talk about the black headstones. I want to talk about the weird head statue called the Watchers. I want to talk about the masquerade in the middle. I want to talk about the remembrance wall. Those are the 5 things that I'm going to describe, and I'm going to vividly describe each one, so you feel how I felt. Stood there, sort of 4 or 5 years ago, and every year for the 20 years before that. And this last bullet point: try to encapsulate a moment in time. So a moment. Now I've chosen to do it in present tense. You don't have to. But you were trying to just like imagine the first time you entered there, the first time, and just think, right, I want someone to feel exactly how I felt in that moment. And that's how I'm going to describe it. So this is my description. Again, very similar to a narrative I've just written, except I made it present tense and tried to make it a bit spookier. Mist coils and snakes around the skeletal trees. See, coils and snakes sort of linked. These bare, decaying sentinels loom over the shrouded ground. Bit of personification. The gates are half open, yet look so permanent and ancient, they seem incapable of any other state. Oh, it's mysterious, but I'm not writing a story, so I'm not going to go into it too much. Then, I'd want to talk about strange shapes as, what? Actually on the floor, in the mist, sticking out the ground. And then I'm going to describe a strange statue in the corner, a bit like the story. Then I'm going to focus in on one particular headstone. Maybe it's been cleaned, maybe what's written on it is strange. And then, for the description, I want to give it a sense of movement, in terms of not just the movement of me, sort of moving from thing to things if I'm moving around a cemetery. Animals or person, I'm not a character, you're not going to give them a name and give their backstory, are a good way of doing that, because you can talk about their movement. And I'm going to talk about a soul raven, because obviously ravens are well but creepy. The raven watches thoughtfully over the cemetery, its beady eyes and focused eye, I'm singular because that's weird, they're focused on the eldritch gateway that protects its kingdom. Its jet black head starts as they seem to creak and slightly close. Again, I'm coming back to the gate. It's that cyclical thing. A little bit of movement at the end. Ooh, look at the raven in Spooky Cemetery. So that's section B. You've got the tools. You've been writing on and off for 12 years and since you went into reception. You've read lots, so you've got ideas about what a good metaphor is, what a good description is. You know, you've got the picture, which should inspire you to think of somewhere similar. You've got the extract, so you've got some ideas and right in front of you in the exam. Oh, that's what they did. They described the woman in one place. They then sort of have a looking out the window at a different location. All the techniques you've just talked about in section A are valid for you to use in your own words. And obviously, I've used a certain high level range of vocab because I'm an English teacher and it's all I've done for 25 years because I'm old. But you know, you can do stuff like if you can't use all of the words, just think about what I've tried to do with the style. So skeletal twisted branches sounds spooky, doesn't it? Swinging with sinister menace. It's that sense of movement as you're reading it, so you're visualising the movement. Right, again, I'll attach them underneath, and I'll attach the rest of the documents in case you haven't seen section A video. Right, hope it goes well on Monday for everyone. Good luck, and just remember the basics. It's a reading exam, a test wherever you can read and understand what the writer is doing, and then it's a writing test to see if you can engage an audience. Good luck, all the best, bye.